Welcome to the Fellas Podcast, the ultimate Formula One podcast for fans by fans, where we discuss all the happenings in the world of Formula One. Now, let's get into it.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Fellas Podcast, where we're going to be discussing the 2025 Saudi Arabian Formula One Grand Prix. As always, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay up to date on all things the Fellas. So, Ray, checked out the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, starting with qualifying. Thought we had a couple things that really shifted the championship battle here. What are your thoughts on qualifying?
Well, I'll say this. Yes, it had impact, but it was interesting. And the fact that Oscar came out to put a stamp on that he is a number one driver, right, with his performance. But also with the bit, well, everybody knows then it seemed that Lando had made a mistake, jumped the curb, crashed, and put himself behind. But what I found interesting, though, was Redbull. Because all through qualifying, right, but prior to that, they were complaining about the car, right, all weekend, including qualifying, complaining about the car. And then Verstappen comes in and drops a scorcher of a lap. Yeah,
he did. But I think, well, with Oscar, I think it was still McLaren's to lose. That's what happened. I think McLaren obviously had the better car. But again, Max will extract the most, if not a little bit more, out of that Red Bull, right? So he doesn't leave any margin for anyone to have any hiccups, like how Lando yet made another mistake that cost him. Didn't cost him dearly, but it cost him. It cost him in a lot of ways. I think it cost him more psychologically, I think.
I agree with that statement.
Right?
Yes.
You know, points, yes, but psychologically as well, because he got decimated by his teammate, right? Because Oscar, whom I will now refer to as the quiet assassin, he put in a great lap. And okay, Max bested him, right? It was at the closing stages of Q3. So I give it to what I got out of qualifying was yet again how the inter-team battle is sorting out, where Oscar is like putting his foot down on his dominance within that team over Lando, and Lando it appears continues to crack, right? Because he makes yet again these silly mistakes where Oscar is not. So that's the big takeaway I got from qualifying. Max, yes, Max a world champion. He's a good driver. You give Max a crack, he's coming in there, right? Lando gives him some fissures, a little bigger, that he can just drive his car through, and park it in the garage. Oscar, not so much. So that's my takeaway from qualifying. I agree with you, but Max, he will get the best out of that car. You can't give him an opportunity.
Just a close up. I agree. But what I found them, so my disconnect with Max was the level of discontentment with the car, and for him to squeeze out a pole position. That's where I kind of find, were they really faking it during that time?
Maybe.
Right? Because if you really, just me being a layperson, if you think of it, the amount of discontent they were reporting with the car, I'd figure that if you ended up third or fourth, it would be a good thing. Right? So, so again, for him to come and crush it makes me wonder if they're being forthright with, the information they're putting out there.
Well, listen, they're probably not. That's why even some of the commentators will wonder sometimes about other drivers, in the team, out on the field, what they're saying. It's being broadcast. It's not like the days when Schumacher era and early Formula One, where team radio transmission was encrypted, and you couldn't. No one could break it. No one could. Right. No one really knew what they were communicating to the driver. So you're not going to come out there and really say, this really sucks. Some driver come out, oh, my tires are really graining. And you're like, oh, man, but he picked up 2/10. How the hell is that graining? That's what you'll see. So I don't always trust the comments I hear.
Okay,
gotcha. Okay, so moving on into the race. What did you think? I mean, I think a lot is in the beginning of that race. So
the first corner was a big speak, right? Because my man Oscar showed up and said, "Hey, I'm not intimidated by you.
Right.
I'm on the inside line, right? I'm reaching the inside apex, and I need to track out.
Right.
You just so happens to be on the outside. So what you gonna do is what you gonna do." And sure enough, as Max would do, he went off course, right? And then they went through the process of forcing the stewards to then penalize him, as opposed to doing a gentlemanly thing and say, yeah, we went off all four, right? It was plain as day. And, let's roll back in and fall behind. No, they took the stance, all right, if I'm wrong, you got to prove it, right? And I'm going to go at it. And I think that was kind of, that's Red Bull's arrogance that I've seen before.
That's it. Yes.
Right. And so, it was just par for the course for Red Bull. Right.
Yeah.
And then, our buddy Yuki, got into a little fender bending back in the field with him and Gasly. Right. I feel for Yuki on that, because he was making progress coming back with the car, and stuff like that. And I want to throw this in there. You think that that Red Bull is saying stuff was wrong with the car because of all the lights that have been shone on it with Yuki and Lawson, when really the car is still set up for Max? Something to think about.
Okay, I'll come back to that. I want to address the start first.
Yeah.
When I watched the start, yes, Oscar did it right. He put his car right on the inside, kept it there, held it. What he also did that was good is he didn't budge. He left it up to Max, which again was a Senna move from back, when Senna was racing. You leave it up to the other guy. So I feel that was a big psychological win for Oscar over Max, something that Lando needs to learn, right? Something I've said in the past, that Lando, this friendship with him and Max, Lando needs to learn to leave that off track and become ruthless on track. That's why I call Oscar the quiet assassin. He put the car there and said, all right, buddy, it's up to you. You can't come back because I'm not moving, right? So what did he do? He went off track, which we know, 4 wheels off the track, you cannot gain an advantage, which he did, right? Then you should give the place back. Red Bull, I'm trying to come up with a nice PC, but I like what you said, arrogance. So I'll leave it with that. I think it's a little deeper than that. Seeing how they respond, they like the rules to always favor them. And when it doesn't favor them, they start crying and whining and he's pouting and I don't want to answer that question and let me move on. I'm like, come on, sore losers, right? That's the way I say. So anyway, getting back to it, Oscar did a great job on shoving Max, giving Max no room, go off track, and left it up to the stewards. And then I have to commend them this time. They did the right move. Penalize that guy. The rules work for you too, and you broke them. So I think again, that's what you said it or Simon said it. Oscar is going to start asserting himself, and that's what he's doing. He's not only asserting himself within his team, he's asserting himself on Max. And the way I know that, I don't want to jump too far. It was reminiscent. I've said it before last year, and I'll say it again. It's reminiscent. I forget the track, but when Juan Pablo did a move on Michael Schumacher, everyone used to jump out of Michael's way. Michael had them psychologically beaten. And when Juan Pablo came in with his Williams BMW on this track, he set his car up and he didn't drive Michael off the track, but he drove Michael off the track, right? And the thing that I noticed in the post-race interviews, you looked at Michael and I'm like, wow, he's shook. I saw the same thing today in a different way with Max. He got shaken. It's like, no, buddy, I'm not moving for you. So anyway, I got a little bit too far on that, but I kind of saw it. I enjoyed it Put it to you that way. I enjoyed. The only other person I've seen do that to Max was Lewis.
Yep.
Right. So closing out that opening, that was an exceptional drive by Oscar, and hey, he deservedly got, Max deservedly got that 5-second penalty put on him, whether they want to accept it or not. Yuki, yeah, I was proud. I'm not proud. I was happy for Yuki that he got in as a Q3. I want to see him push, especially seeing how it didn't seem like Red Bull really wanted him in the car in the first place. He seems to be doing well, but sadly it wasn't really his fault. It was a racing incident, so he didn't get to finish. But I think that
brought out that that helped them to bunch up back the field again, right? Because of the safety car.
Right. So I thought that was good. So moving into that now, what about, it was a good start. It was a good start from Max on Oscar, but then, like we said, Oscar did the right thing and closed it out. And then because Max went off, that caused the whole melee. What about after the safety car?
Well, still, he couldn't move. I think it was a good. It helped the field come back, right? And then they could attack again, right? So I think that was my big takeaway for it, that they could attack again once everybody got closed up, right? Because Max, I think before that, Max was trying the strategy of, the team was doing the whole strategy of, could we push off that 5 seconds, right, between him and Oscar, so that when Oscar did his pit, it would nullify it, right? He would be able to come back in and attack again. And I think that kind of negated that approach. Yeah. That was my take from that.
Yeah. I'll say it again, to sing Oscar praises after his pit stop when he was coming in. I think it was lap 22 when he went out on the marbles to pass Lewis.
That was incredible.
In a part of the track where I think it caught Lewis out too, because you don't expect the driver to pass there. And going out on the marbles, the car's going to get skittish. He's got a big pair. He's got a big pair. Oscar's got a big pair, and he's carrying them well. Because that pass was great.
I think Zach commented on that in the post-race interview.
I think
he was asked that question about, what do you think about the pass that Oscar put on Lewis in the location that he put it on?
Right.
And Zach, I think somebody came through. I don't think he went that far, but he said, yeah, he has good guts, put it that way. But we all knew what he meant to do that, because he's like, I wouldn't have done that. But and a lot of other drivers wouldn't have done that, because it was what you call it there? It was offline, right? Yep. And I think he's just, it was the race was long enough so that there was enough marbles that built up, not as much as towards as the race progressed. Right. However, but that was a major gamble on his part, because I don't know, but for me, I thought Lewis was holding him up on purpose. That was kind of my take. And and so when he's like, he got frustrated and he's like, all right, I had enough of this. I'm going for it. That I think that's what his approach was.
It's one of those things, when you take a gamble like that and it pays off, you're the hero, star, right? Yeah, you're the hero. Yeah, you're the man. And and those other times you take that gamble and it doesn't, you're like, hey, why did you do that? But I'm happy for him that it did pay off, and he did it. Yeah, I agree with you. I did look at that too, and I was like, are you kind of holding him up, Lewis? But again, remember, he's working through after his pit stop, so Lewis really doesn't have an obligation to move out of his way. He doesn't. But in the end, Oscar said, nah, I'm not waiting for this. I'm out of here. I have a faster car. But I think the Ferrari strategy with Charles to take those medium tires so deep, pretty deep. He took them pretty deep in. I think he was still on the mediums on like lap 27. He was running on them, and then he pitted. And then he pitted on lap 30 for the hard tires.
Well, so I'll say this then. I think everybody on that race was kind of surprised with the longevity of the tires, right? They just didn't know what, like how many laps in would they be able to, survive, right? Because of the lack of air coming over him to help cool them, in the degradation attack on the track. But I think Ferrari did a good gamble on that, right? That they pushed it, and they pushed it all the way until they figured they couldn't push it anymore. And then they brought him in, right? Because, right, he was one of the few, only, was it Lando started on the hard, right? And we saw that went, how that went, right? That went pretty well.
Yes.
Right. And we saw, so everybody else was kind of on the mediums.
Right.
Right. And so, but yeah, everybody was surprised, especially that he was not out in front where he had the airflow over the tires to help cool it for the cars to last that long. Right. So, yeah, the compound that Pirelli brought, they were pretty hard in a sense, right? They weren't really soft. They stood up on the track.
Yeah. I like this comment from NGV Motors. Yeah, that Oscar did the right thing. Max is a crybaby. Yep. Thank you, because I'm still trying to keep it PC, so I'll stick with what Ray said, that Red Bull's arrogance, but hey, it's a little different. But there was another comment in the sense that, yes, I think Oscar knows he can beat. I think he definitely knows he can beat Lando.
100%.
And he knows he can beat Max because, like I said, that move was a huge psychological hit.
Of course, 100%.
To both of them, actually, but to Max, that first corner move, So I think that, just to backtrack, just to answer that comment.
And just to close out on that, is just that I believe that in Mosca's mind, he's going to be world champion this year. That's what he's moving to be. Yeah. He's not going to be a second fiddle to anybody, and to his teammate, nor any other team. If McLaren puts the car under him, he's going to be that world champion.
Well, pardon me if I said this earlier already, it's like what you guys said. He's making sure that within the team, he has to be favored. And the way you do, and that's what teammates are supposed to do, right? And the way you do that is that you beat your teammate. He's doing that.
And more.
Right? And more, right? He's beating his teammate. That's your first opponent. And then your next opponent is whoever's out there. That's the other hot shot in the other team, and you want to get at him. And he did a shot across the bow and then some to Max today to let him know. Know that. So, but yeah, just to close out those comments. But moving back into it, so yeah, I think the rest of the race was pretty straightforward. I think when they pitted Lando on lap 35, he had the fresher tires. By then, he went on to the mediums, and then he passed George on lap 41 to take fourth place. So I think they tried to recover. I think they recovered as best they could from his crash. Starting 10th to do that, I think they recovered as best they could.
I agree. I think if he had another 5 laps, he would have been up there with Max, and it would be Oscar, Lando, Max, Piastri, Oscar, Lando, Max, melee going on towards the end there. You just again ran out of laps in order to bring it back, right? Because even though it was, they say it's a track that's easy to pass, I still take it that it was still difficult to pass, because they said, most of the drivers complained about how the car behaved in the dirty air, right? When they didn't have the downforce behind them, right? Going over their car. So I think, but the way Lando was in a tier, yes, he was adamant to show that, all right, the bull kicked me down, but I get back up on this bull and I'm ready to ride it, right? Mm-hmm. And he was adamant in his approach of how he went about his racing today, that, the battle is on. He is, coming for all takers. And I think that was a good thing for him because, yes, he made a mistake, and I think he, recovered. He said, and he's showing that he has the stuff that to take it to the people. Right. And so I found that very entertaining. It was, again, if he had 5 more laps, it would have been, I think the outcome may have been different, and Zach might have been crying at the end because, papaya rules might have been up and out of the window.
Right. Well, the other thing too I want to mention, talking about passes, like Charles with that Ferrari, he passed George. Granted, George started complaining that his tires were a bit, ragged by that point, but Charles put in a nice pass on him on lap 38, to take third, but then, that's what you meant when you said it was going to be, because if Lando had more time, he would have had to come up onto Charles and try to get past him.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
And yet again, just to segue just a bit, I don't know, man. He again, when we're talking about teammates and your first opponent is your teammate, team, Charles is slapping the crap out of Lewis. I mean, although Lewis is, improved and, steadily improving, I guess, this is a 7-time world champion. It's, we shouldn't be looking at him or talking about him with kid gloves so much. Like, come on, you got the big britches here. You've been out here. Again, I'll just say this. Mm-hmm. Charles is slapping the taste out of his mouth every week.
Okay.
It's a race.
I won't step back and I won't say no, but you have to understand, Charles is an incumbent in the team and with the car, right? Lewis is not an incumbent. He's a newcomer, a little upstart. So really, and now everybody has brought their A+ game, because, the big hubbub that was done with the marketing to have the 8-point world, 8-time world champion show up. Everybody say, "Oh, 8-time, huh? All right, we're gonna make this sucker work to get." Oh, sorry, my bad.
It's okay.
Yeah, we're gonna make this sucker work to see it. So I still say there's a lot more. He has obstacles on two fronts. One's the car and how it's set up. Mm-hmm. Understanding how to communicate with the mechanisms in the car is also part of that car thing. And still dealing with his race engineer and what's coming on from that side. And as though they're making progress, right? Yes, we were naive to think that as a multi world champion, you could walk onto a team and just take over right away. Mm-hmm. And now we, the audience, are being humbled to understand that is not the case, right? Because there is a lot of complexities that helps, each driver, contribute to the team and exercise the car to the best of its ability. I still say we have to give Lewis some more time, because now he was 2 guys below Charles and when he finished, right? So that's still good. That's all right, because
no. You mean at the finish of the race?
Well, during the race, he was always like 2 guys below him. So he was the 3rd guy. So it would be Charles, one person, another person, and then Lewis.
No, Lewis finished in 7th. Charles finished 3rd.
No, during the race. Sorry, during the race. When I was watching during the race, his race performance, right? He was always like 2 guys away from where Charles was, right? Okay. So he is showing him. I think he's showing. He is progressing. Yes, we would like him to progress faster, by all means. But this might be the reality of where he is, right? Because it's not only, I was going to recap. It's not only the car, it's also the culture of the team he's dealing with, and then the individuals on the team, right? Okay. And for him sometimes they say, like in the work world, some people say you should rotate your job out, rotate out of your job every, like 5 years or stuff like that. And he's become, because he's been so long with Mercedes, he doesn't really has a grasp of what the outside world is all about. So he's getting an adjustment, right? With the spotlights on top of it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, hey, yeah. I know that. I see that. It's just, listen. Like I said, I'm a Lewis fan. I want to see him. I watch every race and say, "All right, come on, man, get on that gearbox. Get on that gearbox." Just if you want to get acclimated, hang out on the gearbox and get acclimated. At least you're right there getting ready. But, Charles has got him. And you're right. He came into Charles's team. But I'm watching Carlos now, because Carlos seems to have gotten the handle of the Williams and is starting to drive it, you know, extract the best out of it, right? And you know, to your point that yes, Lewis was with Mercedes for such a long time. He doesn't have that skill. I think it was you that said in one of the other episodes, he doesn't have that, and you said it now, doesn't have that skill of being able to always be in a changing environment. So
adaptability.
Right, the adaptability. So he's working on it. But I still will say though, that's all true what you said, but he's getting the taste slapped out of his mouth.
Well, and I agree.
And the fact that he's a 7-time world champion makes it worse, you know? So I'm hoping he gets on top of that quicker. We did say, you know, first 5 races or whatever, let's see what's going on. And, you know, there have been times with Lewis that he builds up over the season to come back in. Well, yeah, you can't leave Charles too much of a gap either, because he's running his race. You know, right now I don't think he needs to be that worried yet.
Well, you know? I think Fred Vasseur said, right? Said give him some time. You know what I'm saying? That was his. On one of the commentators mentioned that. He mentioned that give it some time. And remember, it's the rear of the Ferrari is it's almost funny. Like the Ferrari and Red Bull are mimicking each other. The rear are both loose, right? Mm-hmm. And it seems that Lewis. The degree of looseness does not go well with Lewis. It doesn't go well with Charles, but it seems like Charles is able to figure out a way how to overcome that looseness, right? Mm-hmm. So again, they're still trying to figure out how to tweak the car to give the driver confidence, right? But before we move on, I just wanted to follow up on your comment with Carlos. Carlos has moved teams multiple times. I think they said it somebody commented on that last time. And because of that, he's more adaptable, right? So again, you show what happens to you when you walk around a lot, because even Carlos commented in his post race, I think, or one of the interviews, saying that, they deployed team strategy in order to make sure that both cars finished in the points, right?
Right.
So again, if Williams can step up on their car, they can be up in the top 5. If they can figure out what it is, and with Carlos, and he'll be mixing, because Carlos is not afraid of nobody. Yes, he admitted that this time that he knows who his race is with, and who it is with not, right? Who's not. And so he observed that while he was driving, right? That's what he kept to. But it's
I'll say we have a comment here from NGV Motors. Yeah, that Lewis looked like he was taking it easy, wasn't getting that close to the walls, and doesn't seem to have the same confidence he needs to push it hard. And
that goes back to the car again, twitchiness.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. It's I don't know. I agree with that comment, because I'm. We all know, like, if you have a bad day and you're out there performing and you're doing something, sometimes it might come into your head where, you just say, hey, just settle down. If you push too hard, you crash. Sometimes they say you got to go slow to go fast, right? That's the saying. But coming from what happened with him at Mercedes last year into here, it seems like it's a bit of the same thing.
I agree, but remember now, with age comes wisdom, right? So he may, to a point, it's the adaptability playing on, because yes, you could go hang it out, but you want to be in the wall, right? So I think he might be playing. It's a combination of playing the long game while he tries to figure out how to get this car under him that he enjoys driving.
Well, I'll say this, you said something and it triggered something in me when you said with age comes wisdom, but also with age also comes your edge of taking risks diminish for the most part, right? So you're not in your, a 20-year-old coming into something and you have a 41-year-old or a 40-year-old. The 40-year-old, hey, young man, I wouldn't do that if I were you. I remember the movie, the original Wall Street, where Charlie Sheen said to the guy about this stock tip, and the guy goes, has no fundamentals. You guys got to slow. He was old. He's not about taking any risks, kind of thing. So I think it's the buildup, like you said, but I'm starting to wonder if it also is the age. And I go back to Michael. When Michael left at the height, when he retired, he was really forced out. They wanted to make room for a younger driver to then carry them on for the rest of the years. So he could have potentially won another title if he'd have stayed the next year. But when he came back from Mercedes, except for that one time in Monaco, even Ross Brawn said it, where you saw that flash of the old Michael, wasn't there anymore.
All right, can I jump in?
The difference with Michael, though, he had left.
Okay.
Lewis is still there. So I'm wondering, I'm just wondering, again, I'm a fan of Lewis, right? I'm just wondering if it's that as well, compounding it.
Okay. So I'll say this. Yes, when you get older, you reevaluate the risks as opposed to a young person. A young person will rush on in and, heck, I don't know crap, and I'll figure it out when I get there. As an older person,
just to say this real quick. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off. You're kind of like Oscar going over the marbles in a section of the track where you normally don't overtake.
Man, get out my head. I was just thinking that. So
okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
However, when you get older, you're more calculating because you've been there and seen all these things, and you do an evaluation that it's not that you're risk averse. I don't think Lewis is risk averse. He's just making sure that the risk that he takes stacks up more in his favor than not. And he's not going to walk into a risk where he doesn't know what the outcome is going to be.
Okay. And while you're doing all that assessment and evaluation, they're running past you and your teammates are slapping the taste out of your mouth.
I think
he needs to throw caution to the wind and get in there, man. Get in there.
No.
Anyway.
Remember, just one last thing before you go. You threw it up. Steady wins the race, right? Right. So there's a saying, right? What's the saying? It says the short way brings blood, long way brings reward.
Okay.
There's a saying like goes there. Okay. So he's, as long as he's making the progress and being systematic in that movement. Yes, we as the fans are like reevaluating because he answered that question with the sprint race. He had a car underneath him and he drove the heck out of that car.
Listen. Formula One is like retail. You're only as good as your last win, your last performance. You're a rock star salesperson yesterday. You rainmaker on Wall Street bringing it in. Hey, you're the man. Today you're not. Yo, bro, what's wrong? Right? Nobody wants to hear that. The sprint race, how long ago was that? Right? I'm just saying. I know when it was, but I'm saying, how long ago was that? Now we're up here. I'm just hoping. I want to say it this way. I'm hoping he gets it together soon. Gets it together soon, because I'm starting to think about it that, okay, I'm going to think about next year's car. Maybe that where he may have some input into some of the design of that car, that he could probably get it a little bit more suited to his style and hopefully see it. Because here's the thing. Yeah, he came in there like a mafia don, and all the buildup. And I think if Carlos was in that car, he would have been higher up than Lewis was. And I understand what you're saying. I understand, like, having to get used to it, but you're getting paid some big bucks.
I say I don't disagree that because Carlos showed last year what he could do with the car, right? He did crash somewhat too, but they had his spur of moments when he did do it. So again, I hear the fans, but I think I'm going to go with Fred Vasseur. Give it a little time.
Okay.
We got to be a little bit more patient and then see what happens.
Well, I hope the Tifosi gives them a little more time, because they can be vicious. But moving on to that, just to close out the last few, we mentioned it a little bit in the beginning in the post race, the podium interviews.
Your boy
Max didn't look good. Max didn't look good when he didn't want to talk about it. It looked like a little, anyway. Yeah, it didn't look good. Just want to do that. And just to close that piece out, that last year at the US Grand Prix, when he and Lando had a clash and Max drove him off track, forced him off track, right? And Lando got ahead of him. Lando was assessed a 5-second penalty, right? And as a result of that, and paid for that. And now that it happened to him, you know, pouty and whatever kind of thing. So I just wanted to close that piece off.
Well, I agree. Well, I just want to rebut on what you said. Yes, Matt came out and he acted like you know, with the commentary, because it was, they were so surprised that when they panned over to Charles was like, "It's done."
Yeah.
When he said, because even Coulthard, right, doing the interview was kind of shocked with the response.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what? And sorry. And that's the thing with them. They can't push. Because that's the second time where I've seen something where I'm like, no, go back in. No, what do you mean? Blah, blah, blah. Push that dude. Because they know they can't push, because Red Bull then won't do any interviews. You know what I'm saying? So they just gotta take it, you know, kind of thing. So, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
And even in the debrief room, right, when Piastri was talking, right, with Charles, he was still sore there, right?
It made him look bad.
Yes. Well, it makes him look like the Max that we've come to know. That if I don't get my way, I'm upset, right? But the rule is for me, not for everybody else. Right. I'm privileged.
If I don't get my way, I'm gonna throw my rattle out of the crib.
There you go.
That's it. You know. So okay. So just the last point on the rookie performance this so far. You know, I have Kimi Antonelli in number 1. Isaac Hadjar doing good. I mean, Kimi scored 8 points this race. Isaac Hadjar didn't have a good race last race, but he bounced back. He scored a point, and he might have been able to attack Alex Albon, but then Williams played the team game.
Yeah.
And Carlos eased back to give Alex the DRS to neutralize Isaac's. Yeah. So that he couldn't pass him, you know? But I think Isaac, he's showing really well. Of the rookies, it's Kimi, Isaac. I have Liam there, but to be honest with you, for this race, I think Ali is ahead of Liam. Ali didn't have a great race this one, but it's okay. You know, it's okay. And then the two that I feel are in jeopardy are Gabriel Bortoleto and Jack Doohan. Jack Doohan I have last, 6th. Right? Thoughts on that?
So, yeah, well, I agree with you. With right now, I'm very impressed with the rookies. Let me rephrase. My bad. With some of the rookies, right? And yes, Kimi Antonelli, and I put him and Hadjar neck and neck, right? I think the difference between him and Hadjar is the car they're riding in, right? I think Mercedes has a little bit more sauce on their car than the Red Bulls, you know, but they are very capable driver, and I still give Bierman some props too, because again, he's in a Haas. So again, if his equipment was further up, he would be there in a fight, right? As far as Lawson, Doohan, and Bortoleto, they're nowhere, bro. And, you know, I think Bortoleto and Doohan might be gone, and I think Lawson might get dropped too.
Well, NGV said it. Yeah, it's true. I think I agree. I think Doohan is done. I would be very surprised if he finishes the season.
Yes.
Right? I'll be very surprised. And true, they have Colapinto. I know they have some doubts because he had those crashes for Williams that poor Williams didn't have parts. They might have had to borrow some off a car in the parking lot last year to fix their car, or from other teams to fix their car. But yeah, I think I have him last at 6th, and then 5th is Bortoleto. And those, and then I'm watching Liam to see where he settles down. But I think, I would be very surprised if Doohan finishes the season.
You know, I'm in agreement with that. I already said he's out.
Yeah. So moving with that now, wrapping up, moving into predictions for next race, Miami. What are your thoughts?
All right. So it's going to be Oscar 1. Norris is going to be 2. The Red Bull is going to be in there for somewhere. I think again, I'm walking away that they're lying when they say the car is out of control. Right. So I think it's going to be a Max is going to be there with the outside chance of Charles from Ferrari showing up. Okay. If they can, let me rephrase it. If Ferrari can get on the car and get it more stable, then we'll have like a a 3 to 4 car team attack the thing. But I still think it's going to be the 2 McLarens up front if nothing catastrophic happens during during that qualifying.
I hear that. I'm gonna think that Lando is gonna get himself together over this week break, get his head straightened out, and I think he's gonna come back strong. So I think it's gonna be Lando, Oscar, and Max. That's the way I feel. I'm just flipping your top 2 a little bit. So okay, with that, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you at the next race, which is Miami. There's a week break, and then we'll jump back into it. As always, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay up to date on all things the fellas. Until we see you in Miami, have a great evening. Take care.